What's up, YouTube? Today I want to talk about Khidr, or the Green Man, and who exactly is he? And for those of you who don't know, he's mentioned in Surah Al Kahf, which is the 18th surah, in verse 83, which is interesting because 8 plus 3 equals 11. And anyways, he's instructed to basically guide Moses, and it's because Moses previously had stated that he's the most knowledgeable man, and God basically stated to him, no, we're going to show you someone else who knows the secrets. Um, and anyhow, he basically told him, Khidr, the green man, he met him where the two seas meet. And what I think two seas meet means is it means there's two sides to every story. And so he basically tells Moses, um, come with me, but the only requirement is that you can't ask any questions. And so he does seemingly bad things, like sinks a ship. He like fixes a wall for people who are rude to him. But worst of all, he kills a little kid. And basically, on the third thing, Moses just says, okay, listen, every time he does something bad, Moses asks a question. And he basically gave him 3 strikes, you're out. And on the third strike, he basically said, I killed that kid because he was going to grow up to be a sinner, and so I allowed him to go to heaven. I sunk a ship because there was going to be pirates who were going to steal this ship, and they were going to say, oh, they're not going to steal it now because there's a hole in it. And I fixed that wall because there's treasure in there, and there's going to be orphans who find it later on. I didn't want it to break now, and people find it now, and those kids don't get it. So he's kind of this teacher figure, and he seems to be associated with like life as well, because there was a fish they were about to eat, and it popped out of the water, and so it came to life. And so it's almost like they're green. What does green represent? It represents vegetation, right? It represents life. Okay, so he's a resurrector. He's bringing things back from the dead. Okay. He also has mystical knowledge. So this is somebody who has mystical knowledge, can bring things back from the dead. It is associated with water, and water can mean emotions, or it could be a protector, right? Because back then the water was, people died a lot in the water. Um, Now he's also associated as a wali, like, I mean, not associated with as a wali, but they're not sure if he's a prophet. They're not really sure exactly who he is, but a lot of walis, they say that they meet Khidr, or that he's kind of the initiator of the mystics. And so when I heard that kind of talk about him being the initiator of the mystics, um, I kind of started to think, okay, well, he also could be associated with Metatron, or Idris when he was raised up. That's Kabbalah, because in the Jewish belief, they say Metatron is the initiator of the mystics. And in Islam, we believe Idris was raised up, and that's what it says in the Quran. And we also believe Ilyas is raised up, just as Isa never died. So those are people we believe that never died actually on Earth. Um, but I so Idris would be considered Metatron, and basically Idris was raised up and kind of given angel status. Um, but now a lot of people would associate, Idris with Khidr. That's what a lot of people were thinking. But I didn't come to that conclusion. Just to keep it short, I believe his brother Ilyas, or Elijah, is actually Khidr. Now, where do I get that from an Islamic perspective? Well, from an Islamic perspective, um, it's stated in the hadith that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually says that Elijah and Khidr meet every year in the mountains in Jerusalem. And so that to me seems like they could be like a brother thing where they want to meet up. Um, that's something that I believe. Now, I mean, does it really matter who he is? Not really, but it seems possible that both of these people, because they're the ever living ones and they're so early, Idris and Ilyas, I mean, they were the early human beings. It seems interesting that they're the initiators of mystics. Um, and now, what is kind of Khidr's like overall vibe like? And he's considered a trickster archetype. So what does that mean, a trickster archetype? Well, he tricksters are a very common theme in mythology and religion. They come as, Osiris, Dionysus. These are people who they seem kind of bad in what they do, but then at the end, it's revealed that actually everything they did was good, and so they're really good lesson teachers because they allow the person to like really digest the lesson. And so in mythology, Osiris, Egyptian mythology, Osiris is associated as the green man, the life bringer, and he's also like a trickster. Um, we also associate in Greek mythology, Dionysus is kind of that figure. He's a guide to a lot of people. He's also a trickster. He's associated with green, with life. Um, so yeah, I mean that's basically what I believe. I mean I believe Khidr, he is the an ever living prophet. I believe, we know Idris and Ilyas were two prophets who Allah actually, never allowed them to die, such as Isa. There's another one, but I'm missing them. And, there's probably even more, but this is pretty known fact. So what I believe is that Idris, when he was raised up, he was actually almost like the shaitan before he became bad was raised up. I believe Idris is raised up and you know, he's considered Metatron in the Kabbalistic belief, which is like the highest of all angels and the scribe. And so the reason, there is actually a book called the Book of Enoch, which is the book of Idris, which talks about how when Idris was raised up, he kind of became like, he had like heavenly assignments, I guess is the word for it. Like he became God's scribe. Um, he's also associated, as the angel of life, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, the angel of death. And so it's interesting because Khadr is also associated with life being green. And all these like mystical people, they're kind of associated with green. I mean, green is the color of Islam, and we could say green is the color of light. um, Another interesting thing is that Alexander the Great, in the Alexander Romance, which we actually know is factual because this was written before the Quran, and the Quran actually confirmed the theories about Dur Karnun. So Dur Karnun in the Quran is Alexander the Great, and there's something written before the Quran called the Alexander Romance, which basically confirms what the Quran said. And so it's stated that Alexander the Great could actually talk to Khadr, the Green Man. And so, he seems to be, he's not super much, he's not, it doesn't matter really who he is because it's about the gist of the story. The main gist of the story is where the two seas meet. There's two sides to every story. I think he's Ilias. I think his brother is Idris in Enoch, who's raised up in heaven and has kind of an angelic status. I think they're both associated with mystics, just because they're people and because they're ever living. They've lived so long, and yeah, I mean, another thing with that is in Kabbalistic belief, Metatron is believed to be the prince or like the youngest angel, and it makes sense if angels have been around since before the creation of humans. So if a human was kind of raised to angel status, it's interesting that he's like the youngest one in the heavenly realm, and obviously because humans have free will, God would really favor a human who was very good to him, just as the jinn had free will and God favored the shaitan before he kind of went a little haywire back there. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting stuff. You see that basically the gist of the story with Khadr is there's two sides to every story. He seems to be associated with mystics. I like to research about him. Um, he knew more secrets than the prophet, but it doesn't mean that he was better than the prophet, right? Just because I talk about secrets and this and that doesn't mean I'm a prophet or better than a prophet. Really, Moses never even saw the secrets, never saw the concrete evidence, but he truly believed. And then you have an individual, let's say, who's a wali, who sees secrets, who sees numerology, who can have certain abilities. They're almost given that concrete proof. So it's like they're not even as good as a believer, but it's not about good or bad. It's just, this is an individual who I believe was Prophet Elias, who um, came down to Moses to teach him extra, special scientific, special knowledge. And I think he still does meet with people today because a lot of people are saying they meet with them. Um, so yeah, just something to think about, and also you can research like, do I think like Osiris and Dionysus and these mythological creatures are Khadr? No, I just think though that trickster archetype, and that's something you can look up. the Native Americans call it Hayoka. I just think that that trickster archetype is something you can look up, and kind of see what they're all about. Like Dionysus, he kind of taught through tricking people. Another story, sorry to, yeah, forgot to mention this, but in the Jewish belief, they actually have something that parallels the Khidr and um, Moses story, which is that it's replaced with, instead of Khalid, it's replaced with Ilyas, and instead of Moses, it's replaced with the Jewish priest. And basically, it's the same story, except he doesn't kill a kid, he kills a cow. And then there's also a wall that's broken, and he fixes it. And it's the same thing. So the treasure goes to the kids. Now, do I believe this was before the Quran or after the Quran? I mean, it doesn't matter. I think it could be before, and it would just show that Ilyas is Khadr. But it doesn't really matter. It's just that concept of there's two sides to every story. So sometimes what seemingly seems bad is actually good. But I think is Ilyas. I think Idris is his brother, and that's why they meet every Ramadan. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much.